California earthquake warning. One professor says that the imminent big one on the San Andreas Fault is not impossible. See, even though we have specialist geologists who are in the know about how these things would be working, they don't agree with each other. This is by Rachel Russell on Express UK and other things that we've read recently. The chances of California being hit by an earthquake bigger than magnitude 8, otherwise known as the big one, are not impossible. An earthquake expert claims. So that is amazing. We've already said that if a big one hits the San Andreas, it will not create a tsunami. But if an earthquake hits in the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, that would affect a tsunami. Now, in the Independence Day celebrations in Ridgecreat, South California, they were cut short on Thursday, July 4th in the morning. And afternoon, after the magnitude 6.4 earthquake struck, the second earthquake struck Friday evening about 8:20, July 5th. That had a magnitude of 7.1. The first one had 6.4 and the next day 7.1 with an aftershock of magnitude 5.4. So you can see that they were pretty big. Everything was there. It was pretty big anyway. And now there are concerns growing over the long overdue big one, and that could finally strike San Andreas Fault, which slices through 800 miles of California coastline from Eureka to San Bernardino. And as we know, the San Andreas Fault is the largest fault line in California, the second largest being the Golet Fault, running perpendicular to San Andreas in the Los Angeles area. That's the Golet Fault that we've all learned about now, because at the east end of that is Ridgecreat, where we've been having the earthquake swarms of about 1,500 every day since then. Bill McGuire, professor of geophysics and climate hazards at UCL, warned that a magnitude 7.5 quake could hit, and it would be costing about $250 billion. He said the big one hitting Los Angeles was not impossible, but still unlikely. Now, take that as you may. Not impossible, but still unlikely. Okay? He told Express, "While not impossible, I think that the chances of an imminent big one striking Los Angeles are fairly slim, despite the recent Ridgecreat quake. Of course, aftershocks capable of affecting Los Angeles are possible, and these may be magnitude 6 or even bigger." So yeah, and I have to remind you, magnitude 7, that's pretty big. It's like 33 times bigger than magnitude 6. And my parents, in one of the past videos I explained to you that my parents were both architects. They were architects in high-rise buildings in downtown Montreal in Canada, and also when we moved to New York City, they were architects in major firms, and they were involved in even higher skyscrapers. And they told me that the Manhattan skyscrapers would not be able to stand an earthquake bigger than 7 magnitude. It was just not feasible for architects and engineers to build them to withstand an earthquake bigger than 7, because they would be just too expensive to build. The same thing goes now basically for Los Angeles, San Francisco area. A lot of these areas, for example, in the Loma Prieta earthquake, when the highway fell, it's because part of the supports on one column of the highway was built on ground that was not as strong as the other part of the highway. It was more sandy, for example. So the infrastructure, of course, plays a very big role in the buildings that are going to be able to withstand a major earthquake. Now, an 8 earthquake, forget it. That would basically level everything. I'm telling you that as a matter of knowledge from my parents who were architects, and for decades were working with the best engineering firms of the best skyscrapers put up in Manhattan. Now, in the long term, he says, however, a major quake will score a direct hit on Los Angeles. He's talking about a magnitude 8, which is a megathrust, really huge earthquake. He says the worst case is probably a magnitude 7.5 on the Puente Hills fault in the Los Angeles basin, which is thought capable of taking up to 18,000 lives, costing $250 million. Now, such events are very infrequent and have return periods of thousands of years. The last quake of that scale to hit California before that was a magnitude 6 quake, which struck Napa in August 2014. Scientists recorded more than 30,000 quakes in the area. Look at this, 30,000 quakes in the state's Searles Valley since July 4th. 30,000 quakes and going. Experts do not know when exactly the big one will hit California, but they are expecting it. Dr. Lucy Jones, a seismologist from Caltech, does not believe that the area would see another quake as bad as the 7.1, not for some time yet. She told no, I heard her say that we could have 6.5 or even the 7.1, and it could be taking months or years to come. And she said even bigger. So what it says in this article is not correct. She told the LA Times she could not remember any pattern of quakes which a magnitude 7.1 earthquake came after the 6.4. And she said it's clearly a very energetic sequence, so there's no reason to think we cannot have more large earthquakes. One should always be prepared for the big one. Okay, that's what she said. But after she said that, she assumed that the 6.4 was on the same fault as the 7.1, which is not so. The 6.4 of July 4th was at a different fault than the 7.1 that came a day later on July 5th. Both of these quakes were on different faults, and they were traversing each other. And that is because they were on the Walker Lane fault system, which has a tremendous amounts of faults there. And the Walker Lane fault, no geologist has referred to this. This is unbelievably astonishing. Why have they not referred to the Walker Lane fault area? It's a band that goes from that ridge crest area all the way up to the Cascadia Arc. It sort of tapers off and heads towards the Juan de Fuca Plate, pointing towards the Pacific Ocean to the west, and it's propagating itself, pushing up northwards at the Cascadia Arc. And that Cascadia Arc is filled with high-threat volcanoes. And obviously California has high-threat volcanoes too, which are sitting right in that arc. So no one has mentioned the Walker Lane fault band. It's not a fault, it's a band of faults. And you can see it on Google Earth because it's basically exactly parallel to the San Andreas. And it's easy to see on Google Earth because it's got these huge mountains sitting on top of these fault lines. And this is the band of faults crisscrossing each other, where we had the July 4th 6.4 magnitude and the July 5th 7.1 magnitude. Obviously they jostled each other. They were two different faults, and they were obviously affecting each other with the earthquakes. Now geologists have to scamper and find out what each of these faults could give in the future and what they could give if they're combined again with themselves. And in closing, I just want to tell you that in 1999, in this area of Coastal Volcanic Field in the Mojave Desert, the same exact area, around Ridge Crest, we had a 7.1 earthquake in 1999, And that started an earthquake swarm in Yellowstone a little while later. Yellowstone being about 720 miles northeast of Ridgecrest, South California. Not only did the Ridgecrest quakes start quake swarms in Yellowstone, which is a supervolcano, the Alaska Denali quake also started earthquake swarms in Yellowstone. Also, the Haiti quake started the quake swarms in Yellowstone, different quake swarms. And also the 8.8 magnitude Chile quake started quake swarms in Yellowstone. Now, why are the geologists coming and telling us that Ridgecrest has nothing to do with Yellowstone? It does have something to do with Yellowstone. It gives rise to earthquake swarms in the supervolcano. It's done that recently in 1999, actually exactly 20 years ago, from the same exact area. 20 years ago it did that. Now we just had a 4 magnitude quake that we saw in the area of Manhattan, in the area of northwest, just north of North Geyser Basin in the Yellowstone region. And that was the Manhattan, Montana earthquake. And let me see how deep it was. I'll get back to that again. It has to wake up. Let's see. By the time it wakes up, okay. Oh no. Okay. I've got the aerial and I don't have the depth. Let's see. That was a depth of very shallow, 6 kilometer depth. 4 magnitude on the 14th of July. And it was 3 kilometers northwest of Manhattan, Montana, which is the Yellowstone area, considered Yellowstone area. Just because it's not in the border of the park does not mean it's not in the Yellowstone supervolcano area. Let's remember that they told us a couple of months back that they found that the Yellowstone supervolcano was 2.5 times bigger than what they thought. It was stretching all the way down to the border of Mexico, which means way above the border of Canada, almost close to the Northwest Territories. That's how big Yellowstone is. It's huge. And also we also had the quake swarms around Seattle, which is mega thrust, and the Three Rivers area that was a thrust earthquake from what the geologist says, and it was on a fault with no name. There are so many faults out there. It was on a fault with no name, believed to be a thrust fault. And we don't know exactly what is going on in Ridgecrest because they had an earthquake hiatus. They were expecting huge 6 magnitude quakes for some time, and they never hit. And all of a sudden we're getting this weird quake swarm in a volcanic field that's about 1,500 quakes a day. As I said, 30,000 quakes since July 4th in that area. 30,000 quakes. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This is better than fiction, as they say. And what does that mean? The scientists have no idea what that means yet. Or maybe they do, but they just don't want to disclose it. Does it have to do with the mantle, the magma chamber that's there? Because they do have a magma body, and they have a geothermal plant, one of the biggest in the United States, is right there in Ridgecrest. So we'll keep an eye on this because everything is still going, and there's still a lot of answers that have to be found as to why this is going on. And I would venture to say that, of course, Garlock Fault, which is where Ridgecrest is locked and loaded together with San Andreas. It's locked into San Andreas on the west, and geologists did think that at one point it was so strong it could have cut San Andreas in the middle like that, in that section, perhaps stopping the pressure from reaching all the way down, but that did not happen. It's just zip closed. Maybe it's trying to unzip. We don't know. But we've noticed that we have a lot of earthquakes in the San Andreas region, and we have a lot of earthquakes still going on in the Cascadia Arc section, Vancouver Island, heading north from northwest to southeast through Seattle and through that whole area where we have active high threat volcanoes that are having a tremendous amount of earthquakes. I think the past month, Mount St. Helens went up from the average of 30, it's up to 83 now. Okay, so I'll leave links below for you for this. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.